Welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, the podcast that knows it's not the despair, it's the hope. This week on Heart and Hand, fuck the hope. So welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar. I am your host, and joining me to pick through the bones of a very, very disappointing day at Parkhead was someone who, I don't know what he'd done for it, whether it involved hand jobs to tramps or perhaps other sort of favours, but was in the away end yesterday, Mr. Martyn Ramsey.
Those are all rumours. Thank you. Hi, David. How you doing?
They very rarely have a reason attached to them. At least this week you had her out for saying, but it was to get a ticket as opposed to it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
So,
a tenner.
Yeah, exactly. Off to the sperm bank on a Monday morning. That was a regular thing at university up until they made the law change that the people would be able to contact you, and then it ceased. So many an afternoon was paid for in the boozer at Strathclyde University Union for my donation. Can we put it that way? And if I'm your dad, if it was before 1998, you're not allowed to contact me. It's the law.
No invoices.
No, thank you. Joining us to also help discuss it from, shall we say, the younger and posher angle is James Forrest. Hello, James.
Hello, David. Hello, Martyn. And I think it's very important to state, although I've said it many times before, no, I'm not that one.
No, especially not after yesterday. Well, lots to unpack in the game. Brief summary for anyone who has been on Mars and has missed it. Rangers, I thought, started for about 2 minutes. And I know that sounds really stupid, but you can set a tone in that time. And Rangers started okay, front foot, looked, yeah, here we go, taking confidence for the last one. And then a couple of misplaced passes, a couple of Celtic attacks, Martyn, and Rangers immediately went back to the ball's a hot potato, get rid. When Rangers go into that mode, what they do is, understandably perhaps, it's human nature, is that they then funnel back into their lines basically. And what that meant is you had Alfredo Morelos up front on his own, about 40 yards away from the nearest player, with Rangers just launching the ball back to Celtic to attack. And that would be the pattern of the first half, unfortunately.
Yeah, just needed one example of that for the PTSD to kick in, and it was all just back to normal. We did start quite brightly, and I thought, oh, here we go, this could be quite a fun afternoon, and they looked pretty comfortable and purposeful, and then all of a sudden they just looked like they were absolutely terrified, as they have done before. And you're then looking at the watch and right, when's half time? How can we just get there? We need a break. I mean, it's not easy. Even we got to 35 minutes, 40 minutes before you're starting to look at that. It was the pattern was set far too early yet again. We are just hoping that we can get to the interval and hopefully change things up without too much damage.
It's about use of the ball, James, isn't it? And the fact is that when Rangers go into that mode, where they all look panicked under possession, with probably the exception yesterday of Ryan Kent in that first half. But the rest of them, Candace was having one of those games. The fullbacks were just launching it when they got it. There was nobody to hit particularly. The midfield were so busy trying to contain the Celtic midfield that they didn't have anything going forward at all. And it was a movie we've seen just so often. But it does come down to the root of not being able to hold on to the ball.
The midfielders that we had playing in that game, they're not users of the ball necessarily. They're your hard workers in the middle of the park, and that's fine. But when you have a situation like we had yesterday, those kind of players, you're really missing them. And then the responsibility falls more on your white players. Candace, Kent, Tavernier, maybe to a lesser extent Halliday. Candace's distribution was terrible. Everyone that was trying to knock the ball forward, it was long balls that Morelos, for certainly the first half hour of the game, he wasn't able to do anything with them. It was too much to ask of him to deal with that, and that would have got very frustrating for him, I'm sure. But it was very frustrating to see the poor distribution from the wide areas, particularly Candace. He's not someone that's his good side of his game. It's been said many times before, but if he was good at crossing and passing, along with what else he's good at, he wouldn't be playing in Scotland. And it's a question of whether you're willing to kind of put up with that, that lacking in that side of his game for what else he gives you. And I'm not sure now. Before I was able to put up with it, but now after that being so obvious yesterday, I'm kind of fed up with it. So, you need to, if you're going to have Morelos be your key guy, you need to give him the opportunity to do stuff, and he had none of that because there was no one there that was able to get the ball to him. And that was, there was a real fear at that point about, where's our route, because the way that we play, we know what our attacking route is. Everyone knows what that is. So without that, what else have we got? And very rarely have we seen anything else this season.
A lot of the time, Martin, that people, or a lot of things I saw yesterday, after the match, where I was really disappointed in the first half. We stood off them. That's, that I don't understand the game plan. Why were we doing that? We saw it the last time at Parkhead and it didn't work. Why were we doing it here? I'd love to sit down and ask the manager, because I don't necessarily think we were told to do that. And again, I'm going to look at the first couple of minutes as the evidence for how we wanted to play. I think it was just, as I say, the reversion to type, if you like. As soon as things began to go into a pattern that the players, unfortunately, are familiar with, that they regressed into it, and that it took to half time to get them almost refocused, resettled, and I don't know, maybe the whole down to 10 men common cause thing kicked in. I don't understand, but I mean, surely we didn't go into that match with the game plan to set off them at Parkhead, because that, for any team in Scotland, is a recipe for disaster.
If we did have the playbook that we're going to set off and just try and pick them off in the break, then it's been handed down by some of the greatest Rangers teams we've ever known.
Better Rangers team than this.
Far better Rangers teams than this.
Yeah, but that's my point. I mean, those guys, when Celtic were coming on to them, didn't look like they were shitting themselves every time.
That's different. And it's they were deliberately executing that plan with the knowledge that we have the best goalkeeper we've ever had, and we've got a couple of the best central defenders we've ever had, and we've got two of the best creative players we've ever had. Once we soak this up, and we can soak this up, once we spring that trap, you're fucked. And that breeds so much confidence and belief through the team that they can sit there and take that. So that's not quite the same situation. So setting off them, I don't have too much of an issue with, as long as you're well organised enough to repel them when they inevitably come at you, and then you're devastating enough in counter. Now we'll talk about that pretty quickly, because the second half we were in stages very promising and very productive ones, but it could have been a whole lot different. Going back to the last point, we talk about bravery and we talk about bullying and things like that in Old Firm games all the time, and we almost always mean physical and getting stuck in and rattling Scott Brown because we're obsessed for some reason with him and everything that goes with that. And it's not even half the story. Yes, they do need to be brave, but it's bravery on the ball, as you said. It's give me the ball. I will dictate the tempo of this game. And I will create something. I want to create something. I want to take that responsibility on, and it's just the same pattern. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We did start with a seemingly different plan, but it just went back to type. But there is a difference. We were hoping to get to half time with just one, instead of that being absolutely comfortable that we could soak that up and spring them whenever we get the chance.
Yeah, and the goal when it came, was a debacle. I mean, it really was a piss poor goal to give away, and so frustrating because that's the third time this season we've conceded at Parkhead, and in every single instance it's come from us having the ball, which is going back to the whole hot potato thing. Yeah. And of course, potatoes will be the forte of one of the sides rather than the other in an Old Firm match. What happened here, James? That was worth a laugh, lads. I'm disappointed there.
I did snigger under my breath. Don't worry.
I prefer more sycophantic, louder snickering if that's possible in future.
Just edit it.
That seems cheating. I thought it was worth it on its own.
But then you'll end up like in a TFI Friday, Radio 1, where we kind of gaggle of sycophants that always cheer and laugh and whoop. No one needs that.
No, is that not what we're meant to be, Martin?
I think that's your role.
Yeah. Right, I do like TFI Friday, Martin. It's very much down with the kids on this show, isn't it?
Teenagers there, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get the references. That's us. Gen Z, I believe we are. So it's important to know your place in the socio-economic structure. Anyway, moving on. James, the goal was a debacle. Long ball, free kick. Rangers smash the ball up the park. It breaks down. It falls to Daniel Candeias, who turns and passes it straight to a Celtic player. They break. And then Connor Goldson misses the chance on the halfway line to take out Edouard, who starts running at Joe Worrell, who jockeys him and jockeys him and jockeys him and jockeys him until eventually he's in his own box, at which point Edouard drops his shoulder, which completely sells Worrell, has a shot which goes, I thought, pretty close to Alan McGregor. Wasn't the cleanest strike either. I thought he might have done a bit better with it. And just the feeling of, we've done it again. We've shot ourselves in the foot yet again here.
Were we not so invested in Rangers, we'd call this goal a comedy of errors, but it was more a tragedy from our point of view. Candeias giving the ball away like that's just not thinking. That's trying quickly to, take responsibility away from yourself. I think when you play like that. Goldson, much like in the previous game at Parkhead this season when Ajaria had the chance to take out, I think it was Rogic.
Yeah.
I think Goldson should just take him out, accept the yellow card, and take it from there. My biggest issue with the goal is Worrell, the fact that he jockeys away, that, like you say. If you look at the Liverpool Spurs game from yesterday as well, Van Dijk was in a similar situation when Sissoko was through on goal. But the problem was he had two attackers to deal with. So it was understandable why he did that. But with Worrell, there was only Edouard. So I don't know what's different now to what it was back in December when he was in a similar situation against Forest. And he puts in the tackle, he wins the ball, it goes out for a throw-in. But at that time, he's just standing off, opening up his body, allowing Edouard, basically saying to Edouard, right, you run into this path, that's fine. And then the shot should have been saved by McGregor. I think he could have got something on that at least. So disappointment from that end as well. But add all those things together, it's just massive frustration. And it felt like it was coming from the way that the game had been going. It was just constant kind of last ditch defending and not using the ball and them controlling the middle of the park. And it was just this horrible air of inevitability about it all.
Unfortunately, and at that point we know we're right up against it. There is the worry, as Martin says, the PTSD kicks in and you think we've been here before the flashbacks start, and it then gets worse when 10 minutes later referee flashes a red card for something I don't think many of us had seen clearly, but then on the replay it shows Scott Brown going up behind Alfredo Morelos, trying to rake his foot down the back of his leg, a la Kurt Broadfoot. Alfie kind of throws his arm up, catches Brown on the top of the chest. He goes down holding his face. First of all, and I know that this will disappoint Alfie's legion of hardcore supporters, but it was a red card, right? Any disagreement?
No. None from me whatsoever.
Yeah. Stonewall red card for me. And the defence of it that I've seen from a limited amount of Rangers fans, I must say, is, well, Brown provoked him, which he did. But Martin, Scott Brown is a scumbag. Him acting like a scumbag is par for the course. You knew that was going to happen. And for me, the disappointing thing is A, that he did it, obviously, again, but B, it wasn't like this was 80 minutes after him solidly needling him all day. It's half an hour into the match, and his fuse just went straight away. We can debate the rights and wrongs of what Brown does and what Alfie gets, and we've defended Alfredo and we've stood up for Alfredo a lot this season on this show, and we are aware of the way he's treated in Scotland. However, the real politic of the situation was yesterday, if you do this, that's exactly what he wants, and he wins. It's that simple. And you won't further your case by doing it. And that's exactly what happened.
Being outsmarted by Scott Brown's like my spaniel pretending to throw a ball for me and me running into the door trying to find it. It just shouldn't happen. You know what you're going to get. You're absolutely right. I've only seen bits on Twitter. I haven't watched the game back. Being there was enough. So I don't know how bad the kick or the rake or whatever it was. I don't know if it didn't look as bad or as premeditated and as deliberate as Broadfoot.
No,
so
it
was more. It was
it
more
wasn't.
just like it was more like a kind of trip. It was a niggle or whatever else. But he's swung his elbow around to try and catch him. Right, he hasn't caught him flush in the face, and Brown
Sadly.
has. Yeah, well, we'll get to that. So Brown has made the most of it, but. I don't want to go into the details of another article that I haven't read yet, but it does touch on the ability of all of us to deal with pressure situations and stressful situations, and how our mental capabilities are doing that as a species, never mind individuals, and being able to, as elite athletes who are often in pressure cooker situations, how to deal with that. And 10 games he'll have been suspended for this season.
Yeah.
Once this ban's done.
It's a 4 game he's got. That's been confirmed.
And
none of which, incidentally, none of his red cards have come from a tackle.
No. And listen, there's been a few of them in the ambiguous column, shall we put it that way, where if you're a Rangers fan, you think, oh, that's harsh, but if the exact same thing happened to a Rangers player, you say, well, you can maybe see why it's been given, offered up the opportunity, blah, 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 blah. There's been a couple. This one, I'm sure there was another one. The first Aberdeen one, the second Aberdeen one, the one at home. I'm pretty sure that was a pretty straightforward decision as well. For him, and this is his business, and I'm struggling to care less about that future for him, but it's something he's going to have to curb, because he's a liability to us, he's a liability to anyone else, and especially if they're going to have to spend 8 figures to get him. He could ruin a talent by just being unable to deal with those pressure situations. And he was it you that tweeted that he sold the jerseys?
Yeah,
that's exactly what that is. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's not a continual game of needle and wind up, of which he is an exponent, and we love that about him, especially when he stays within the line, when he winds defenders up. So he knows the game. It's not some fresh-faced, naive young striker that's just arrived here that is a very, I don't know, what you describe him as maybe pussyfooting around a wee bit or a wee bit soft. Alfie knows the score, and it's early enough in the game. It's not like those old Scottish Cup games at Celtic where it seemed like we get men sent off during Souness's time all the time, but we were about 2 or 3-0 down at the time, and the game was just a riot. It had gone away from us. We're still in it, and it was just incredibly disappointing when it happened.
Yeah, it was, and of course, there's been the inevitable fallout. I think that Steven Gerrard spoke for most of the Rangers support when he said, I can't defend him anymore, he'll be fined. And Steven Gerrard's going to recommend he's fined a week's wages, and that wages is returned to people like you, Martin, who attended the match yesterday. 800 by, around 30 grand a week. You'll do 37.50, mate. So...
I like the sentiment for PR reasons, but we know what we're paying for. We know the risks. That's just part of the deal.
Yeah, I think if the money was to be given to charity, I think that's something everyone could agree on would be a good use of it. But James, the manager, very disappointed. Obviously, Alfredo Morelos has issued a statement today where he has said, I think what you would expect me to say, says, "Good afternoon. I would like to offer an apology to all the fans, my teammates and to the coaching staff for what happened in yesterday's match. I promise to do everything in my power to ensure that nothing like that happens again and to give the club and the fans my all. Thanks for the support and affection you've always given me." Kind of heard stuff like that before.
Yeah, it's, you should be doing your talking on the park, mate, and you give yourself the opportunity to do that, and you just let yourself down and you let us down, and sadly not for the first time this season. It's just got to the point now where Steven Gerrard rightly, he said, as much as we think he's a talented player and as much as we love him as a guy and the way that he's grown on us and the way he's developed under us and what we can see with his talent, yeah, it's one too many times. That's 5 sending offs in a season. Not even fucking Sergio Ramos gets that many red cards in a season. Now, obviously some of them are, have been more dubious than others, and some have been rescinded and whatnot. But still, the disciplinary record is a massive, massive issue. And yeah, that's fine. You can say that you're really sorry. The way to repay is not with words, it's with actions. And the actions are you come back and you perform and you score and you stay on the park, because we need him on the park. And when he's not there, the majority of the time, we find it very, very tough.
Does this impact his value, Martin? Does this impact?
I go back to what I said. There's clearly talent there that should go without saying, and you don't have to be Peter Taylor, another reference for the teenagers there, to be able to recognise that kind of talent and prepare a bid. But it's no use to any club being in the stands. You maybe wonder whether out of this goldfish bowl, and again I've repeated it, if Hibs or Aberdeen had the contacts in Finland that we did and managed to unearth them, and could afford them, to be fair, and brought him over, he would have flourished in much the same way, and would have come under nowhere near the same kind of scrutiny that he has, because he plays for Rangers. And if he goes to the Championship, which I imagine would be the protocol, I can't really see him going straight to the Premier League. I think he would have to prove himself in England. It's less of a goldfish bowl, less of a microscope, and perhaps that might help take a wee bit of the attention and the marked man kind of thing away from it, and he can just enjoy his football, learn and develop with a wee bit less attention around them. But
it wouldn't surprise me. Sorry, man. It wouldn't surprise you talk about England as the next destination. It wouldn't surprise me if he is the kind of player the next move is a China, where there's even less pressure, and maybe that's something that would
be a real shame.
I know,
given the talent, not a real shame for him and his family. And listen, his journey as a human being is something that we can read about, but we can't identify with that. Not even the working class boy made good like you, Davey, can identify with that kind of story. This is life changing amounts of money, I suppose. But from a footballing point of view, that would be a shame, because as much as we get frustrated with him, we would be interested to see what he's actually able to do, how far he's able to develop. But he needs to listen to people, and he needs to take on board the guidance and the coaching, and I'm just not convinced there is an ability to absorb and to take on lessons, technically as well as temperamentally.
If
No,
I may
that's
just
definitely
answer
a worry. No, you may not. Shut up. So, go on.
to answer the question you answered, Martin, in terms of does it affect his valuation, I don't think it affects the starting price, but I think with this amount of stuff that's been going on, you'll get less clubs getting involved in the bidding war because I think there'll be less clubs that will want to deal with that side of it as well. So what it might do is it might affect the overall money that we could end up getting in from because of less clubs being involved in wanting to sign him, which is also a shame.
Don't forget again, we talk about this on other shows, David, the ego of managers who will believe that they'll be the ones that will be able to mould them and finish him off as an article, and therefore will be worth spending however much we've set it up, because the ego of football managers that especially Alfredo's absolutely nowhere near in this category, but the players that have bounced around clubs and have been problems, but still managed to find clubs because there's a talent there, and managers are egomaniacs, and they think they'll be the one to get a tune out of them, a consistent one.
Yeah, and look, somebody will. I've no doubt about that eventually, and hopefully for his own sake he matures. He is still very young, but that didn't do us any good, and was cold comfort as we faced up to the rest of the match with 10 men, a goal down, Celtic Park braying. And we spoke on the preview last week, though, about what would happen if, in one of these Old Firm matches where there's hardly any away supporters, the away team did put the home team under a bit of pressure. Well, Rangers, I think much to everyone's surprise and delight, did exactly that, coming out in the second half and being the better team. It was that simple. I've watched the game back. Rangers were suddenly keeping the ball, moving it well, working space, working channels. Now, some people say, well, they didn't create a lot, but they had Celtic on the back foot for the first time. And you could sense the growing level of, first of all, bewilderment, then annoyance, and then sheer rage among the home support. And it was capped off by Ryan Kent's goal. Martin, were you aware, being, as I say, one of the lucky 800, were you aware of the sort of changing mood? Because it was very noticeable. And as I say, in the immediate aftermath of that goal for about 10, 15 minutes, it just felt like all the momentum was with Rangers.
Yes. The first half was very loud. Half time was very loud. And it was almost as if they sat back and expected the second half show and the continuation of a bit of a goal fest, as they have been accustomed to in recent years, to be fair.
Yeah, a procession to take place.
Yeah. Now, Rodgers' teams would do that. He's a bit of a weirdo, but he's quite an intense kind of character in a professional way, rather than being an intense kind of maniac like Lennon. But Celtic, they were quite flat, and whether it was us free from, I guess, the pressure of any expectation or jeopardy or whatever it was, started playing some good stuff, started actually knocking the ball to Rangers players, which I don't think you need to be a theorist to appreciate helps. And yeah, the angst did grow. The goal was superb. The goal was a counter-attacking goal because we are a good counter-attacking team. Problem is, 15% of the games that we've played or will have played this season are where we need to counter-attack.
Yeah, are suitable for that. Yeah, it's not going to happen domestically that often.
And Adam's been banging that drum all season on his tactics show on Patreon. And it's a valid point, and it's one that needs addressed in the summer. But there's an example of when we're genuinely very good. And there was a relationship out wide, yeah, but it wasn't just being funneled out wide to the byline, an aimless cross into monster defenders who just mop it up. We were incisive early, and we got into the middle of the park early enough. Kent still had a lot to do. I think Adam, giving Tav the assist there is reasonably generous, but he just drove at some tired players and some worried players that just weren't getting their groove together. And he finished well. If we're looking at the season as a whole, there's a lot to endear the fans to Kent. Not just at the end of the match, but just he does try. I think over the course, his numbers might be a little bit disappointing. I think for the potential that's definitely in there and how much the fans maybe have taken to him. But he, like he did at Ibrox on the 29th of December, he certainly stood up on this occasion.
He's got balls, that kid. That's one thing I think we've liked about Kent. Even when he's not playing well, he still shows for the ball. He still he has that bravery that a lot of players sadly lack. That if he's not playing well, if he's getting it from the crowd for not beating his man, it doesn't stop him taking his man on again. And I like that in a player.
No, absolutely. You extrapolate that for him and I guess the team. Listen, we're hurting again, but the Old Firm games aren't the issue. We're not miles behind, and the league isn't over because of the Old Firm head-to-head. We know that, and it's about players like Kent and throughout the team turning it on all the time, or going to Dundee and Kilmarnock and knowing that a draw just isn't good enough, and having that desire to be seen. The cameras are on me, the tension's on me. I'm going to step up, but. Going back to the game, super goal, and you know me, Davey. I'm got a very positive, optimistic kind of guy. But there was a listener, there was a subscriber standing beside me. So if he is listening, he can vouch for this. I felt it was there for us. Even 10 against 11, it would soon become 10 against 10. But they were there for the taking, and you're right, the momentum was with us, and we had a couple of chances to. Convert that pressure, but I genuinely felt we were on for a win.
As did I, but the next key moment, unfortunately, James, Ryan Jack misses a good opportunity, and then just I think 5 minutes to go, James Tavernier is shot with a pass on the halfway line. I think he was looking for Connor Goldson. I'm not entirely sure, but doesn't get anything on it. Goes straight to Callum McGregor, who I think is probably Celtic's best player. He hails off with the ball, puts it across to James Forrest, who I think is probably Celtic's other best player. He makes no mistake, decent finish, and it's 2-1. And it was just, and even then we almost got it back. Joe Worrell with a chance near the end. It was just couldn't force over the line. And in the end, it was so near but so far again.
Yeah, that was what was different this time than previous trips to Parkhead was after the game you felt we really had a decent chance there. There was a spell for a lot of that second half, particularly when they went down to 10 men, that I felt the only winner of that game was going to be us, and then just a stupid mistake from Tavernier, gives them that opportunity. And they've been in this situation before in recent weeks where it's required late goals to win games. They have that mentality to do that, and if you give them the opportunity more often than not, they're going to take it. And yeah, we had a chance late on with Worrell as well. He's unlucky. I haven't seen it back initially. I was maybe a bit more annoyed at him than maybe what I should have been regarding that, because I think it's well defended, sadly. But yeah, just the deflation. But I think the thing to take from that is that in itself we can look at and say, okay, well, there is small bits of light there where it's, rather than being absolutely angry at getting an absolute tonking and not trying and accepting the defeat and holding out for a 1-0 loss and maybe trying to get a goal late in the break, we actually went for it in the second half and we caused them pressure. So we are getting closer. There's still a bit to go, but that game should be seen as evidence that we are still on the right track.
Sorry, James. Just on that point, if Tav doesn't have his brain freeze or whatever it was, the game runs its course. It's 1-1. That's exactly the same game we saw last season, but it was 0-0, of course, and the season before when it was 1-0. Timid, under pressure first half. A Celtic coming out in the second half thinking they would walk it to the end, and it was Rangers who were the stronger team in the second half. In all three of those games.
Didn't have 10 men in those.
Didn't. But the same momentum and flow
it's quite
we've seen before.
Quite a big different factor though, Martin. I mean, 10 men in an Old Firm game is quite often a game changer. I mean, it is quite a different factor to throw into the equation. But I take your point. But
for 2/3 of the game as well.
I'm not dismissing that.
You are. You are dismissing that. You're saying it's the same. It's not. It's different. I take the overall point.
The same pattern of a game.
We've showed we can do this before, but even so, that those teams don't exist anymore. They're done. It's yes, it's Rangers, but it's a current 11. And for me, it was the positive I would take from it was that they showed balls and spirit that we didn't necessarily think at half time that they had in them. So I'm going to take that. But moving further on, there was then another incident. Scott Brown wouldn't give the ball back to Rangers players who wanted to kick off quite quickly. It's one of these silly stramashes that happens just about every football match, I think. And Ryan Kent, he's quite a tough little bastard, Martin. He lashes out, shall we say, because I've seen pictures where it looks like I thought it was a shove. Again, Brown falls with a flat back bump like a pro wrestler, but I thought it was a shove, but you look at the other angles, it might have been a punch. Don't have too much condemnation of him. Maybe you're different. Yeah, he could have been sent off and probably should have been sent off. I don't disagree with that. But
not going to change it.
Yeah, but I would have.
Yeah, I think we'd all been tempted. Yeah, I saw this. I don't know how this was transmitted, whether it cut to a replay or whatever else.
It was a replay. Yeah, we didn't.
I was looking. I don't know if everyone's the same when they're ever at Parkhead, or I don't want to look to my left or my right. So you just kind of look straight at the game, straight at the centre circle. So I was looking at that area of the park, and it looked like a punch as clear as day. And you think, oh fuck, here's another one. But I don't think it would have changed anything really.
Not at that point. But the only other major incident, and I want to start with you on this one. James described Worrell chance, which I agree, James, was probably good defending, unfortunately for us, rather than a bad miss. I thought.
Yeah. At the game, I was screaming for him to take Ayer into the net with the ball, but I concede that might not have been as simple as my very side-on restricted view.
Quite a big lad. But then came another Brown-led incident. Now, you'll remember after the last Old Firm match, the police issued a report in which they suggested that Celtic's lap of honour contributed to disturbances after the match and incited the Rangers support. The clubs were both warned by the police on Friday not to repeat any of that. Yet, as soon as the match ends, Scott Brown, of course, makes a beeline for the Rangers away support, proceeds to celebrate in front of them with his arms aloft, and then quite clearly does the get it right up you gesture to the Rangers support.
Yep.
Andy Halliday sees this, he belts over, there's another stramash. For some reason, Andy Halliday gets a yellow, which makes a second yellow, which is a red and a suspension. Scott Brown, of course, doesn't. And your take, you were there.
Presumably they get a briefing.
They did. The clubs both received a briefing before the match, last week.
And presumably we would have had the similar briefing before December 29.
Both clubs get the same briefing, yes.
Yeah. But the reason he gives it no heed whatsoever is because he's untouchable here. Now, in the context of this league championship, there could have been arguments to be made, or an argument to be made, that we over-celebrated on 29th of December. We did the flagship immediately after that. We were together, David, on that day. That was more than just 3 points in a title race. It meant more. It was more symbolic and significant than that. and the players were absolutely right to enjoy that with the support that have suffered for some time. I don't remember Rangers players making a beeline to that corner on that day. I might have missed something. I'm sure I would have seen it on Twitter. It was very much I nearly said communion there, definitely not the word to use, but it was definitely much a relationship and a celebration between the support and the players on that day, very much to each other. Clearly deliberate on yesterday, clearly antagonistic. There have been players sent off on the field of play for worse. Andy Halliday at Morton, for example.
For less, rather.
Yes, for worse, yeah. Sorry, for less, yeah. A worse decision, sorry.
Yes.
Daniel Candeias at Love Street, I think, possibly, or blowing a kiss at a player. It's it's flaunted because he knows there'll be no comeback on that whatsoever.
It is really that simple, isn't it, James? He knows he's not going to get a booking. More likely the other player will. He was on a booking, so he would have been off. But he knows he's not. He knows he's not going to get cited by the compliance officer, and he knows he's barely going to be. He's barely going to be even criticised for it in the media afterwards. This is a guy who plays for the establishment club in Scotland. He knows that they have got the media. He knows that they have got power and influence at the SFA. And he himself over the years has cultivated good relationships with journalists. So he knows that there's no comeback at all on him. He can do what he likes.
Michael Stewart in the sports scene last night saying what Scott Brown did in the whole game. There was nothing overly wrong with that. And he's including that incident. That tells you all you need to know. Not that Michael Stewart should be the be all and end all when it comes to opinion of Scottish football, far fucking from it. But yeah, no danger. None of us think that there's going to be any citing on him for any of that behaviour, and it's just so wrong. That's the case, but that's just how things are. And on December, I was, we were all there. I didn't see any Rangers players going toward the Celtic fans at all. Didn't see a single moment of that. The only thing I saw was the Celtic team going over to there and then quickly going back because they realised no one was actually there anymore. We were celebrating amongst ourselves, but that's not enough for them to do when they went at their home. They need to do more than that for some reason. They need to try and get those extra points in or whatever you call it, and it's just shows you a total lack of class from someone who we know has no class whatsoever. Is just a scumbag, pure and simple.
And James has class, folks, as you can tell by the voice. I mean, James gets out the bath to take a piss. That's how classy James is.
Please tell me you do the same.
But how do you think I get the water? I'm from Corinnan, mate.
Oh, God.
I want to take I want to take exception to Martin's thing that I'm no longer working. I'm very working class. I'll have you know, Martin. I had a pot noodle the other night.
Your diet is certainly you'll be right. You'll be writing books on that. I'm pretty sure.
It's sub working class. My diet. It's really is one stage above bin dipper. It's it's not good. I'm one of the few people in the world who not only knows what a hamwich is, but also where it's still available from. So
your butler does bring the Space Raiders in a silver platter or on a silver platter.
I will occasionally try to. I can't actually tell this story, but it's not a joke. It's a story. But the place I live, Coinning, is not. Shall we say? It's not the most politically correct, forward-looking town in the country.
Not metropolitan.
Yeah, that's the word. It's not metropolitan. Very little moisturiser sold down here, even to the women, who quite often more dire need of it than the men. But I ordered a takeaway the other night from the Chinese, and when it arrived, the delivery driver, and I thought, the only place in the country you can probably get away with this, said to me, "Here you go, sir, here's your..." And he said a C word that wasn't Chinese and rhymed with Tinky. And I thought, wow, but he clearly didn't mean any harm by it. But co-winning. Of course, I then, being gave him a copy of the Socialist Worker and had a lecture about
getting a piece of your mind.
I did.
But back on topic. What's your thoughts about players who do that, who run over and deliberately rub it in the opposition fans? Is it a lack of professionalism, lack of class? Is it part of the pantomime that is football? Was Gary Neville charged all those years ago by, I don't know, he must have ran about 60 yards to the Liverpool corner?
Yeah, he was fined for it,
Yeah.
Personally, look, I think that if you give it out to a player, like I don't get upset at the cup tier thing. I don't like it if it's my own players that do it to me, Josh. But if we give somebody dogs abuse for 90 minutes and then they score a goal and they run past us and they do I don't hear you singing now, we need to be growing up. We need to be mature, right? That's fair enough. We gave it out. We need to take it. I'm aware that society doesn't work like that anymore, but even so. There is a line, though, and there is a difference. And there is a difference between when people are disappointed after their team lost. When they are surrounded, that's the other thing. There are 800 getting out. There have been incidents before. There is a city centre. And when you walk up to them in full-on triumphant mode, now what would have happened if Brown had been attacked? What would have happened if Brown had been under a shower of coins then? People would have, suggested...
It'd be my fault.
Yeah, people would have been arrested. People would have been lifted. There's no need for it. Just don't do it. You can go and celebrate with your own fans. You can be as triumphant as you like. To me, it is a very small mentality because it's not, look, we won. It's how you lost. And to me, it indicates that you are viewing, as we know that they do as a club, everything through the prism of Rangers. They don't view anything through the prism of themselves. And if that's your first instinct. But especially having been done with it before. Like I say, if you do a bit of in-play stuff, I don't have a problem with that. But then when we hear about fan behaviour, which we hear a lot about from the media, there's an awful lot of pontification about it. There has to be that balance. And there has to be, okay, we want fans to behave in a certain way, fair enough. Absolutely correct, and that's how fans should behave. But you've got to apply some rules to players. Had Scott Brown at the end of the game ran over and been given it, Laldy with his own supports, picking up the scarves, all the rest of it, doing the arms aloft thing, that's okay. It would have annoyed us, but we just need to live with that. That's tough. Our team lost, right? Get over it. But to run up to the Rangers fan, in what way is it not confrontational? No. How can it not be said to be trying to antagonise them? It's the very thing he's trying to do is antagonise them. Now, the ultimate end game of antagonises someone is to draw a reaction. So say Brown draws a reaction and somebody hits him with a coin, for example. Now, absolutely don't want anyone to ever chuck a coin at somebody, especially not to someone who will revel in the victimhood of it. But had that happened, we know that he would have been absolved of it. And it would have been just the responsibility. So just how about acting like a grown-up? And I think that if you look at someone, Colin Hendry's comments today, I thought were very interesting because no matter what you might think of Colin Hendry as a player, he was a very dignified guy, I thought, on the field. And he said it's just the poorest example of a captain I've seen. Because it is. Because it's childish, it's moronic, it's all the things that Scott Brown's personality leads you to believe he is like. He clearly is somebody who revels in antagonism. I find that really tediously depressing, that people that get their kicks from upsetting others rather than from doing anything positive. I think to me it speaks to a very, very small mind. And for me, he should be punished. He should certainly receive the second yellow and face a suspension based on it. And he should certainly receive a fine. Because he was warned that the police took action. Because otherwise, then, what is to stop players doing it? If the police issue warnings, if you or I ignore a police warning, Martin, and continue to do something they've told us not to, there will be consequences.
No, there will.
Surely it must apply there too.
My issue with him, I made my feelings known at the time. Obviously, very angry with the result, and when you're there and there's only 800 of you, and it's not a great experience, but you bank them and you store them up, and eventually it makes things a lot sweeter. But I think I might have texted the group chat something that would probably get me arrested. But my issue with Brown in the strut is that he's not a good player, and he is, I think, carried by far better players around him in that midfield.
Agreed.
And I struggle to remember either at this stage at the end of his career or at the start of his Celtic career, I struggle to remember him rising to the challenge of a proper Rangers midfield and coming out on top, like true champions do. They thrive on not easily beating Josh Windass or whomever else, but a proper Rangers midfield. The way they played at the end of the year and saying, all right, I'm in a game, good, because I've been waiting for this, and getting the better of them. Because I don't think his head-to-head record when Thompson was playing for us is particularly good. So that's what winds me up, and it just kind of cracks me up about him as a player. He's the absolute epitome of the flat track bully, and when a Rangers midfield is not there, he gets to act as if he's orchestrating this. I don't think so. I think McGregor's a far better player, far more intelligent player, and there's other guys in that midfield, other guys in that team that actually pull the strings, but he profits off that, and he portrays an image that he sometimes or somehow propels that Celtic team against all odds and against great challenges when he's been thrown about in Europe like a fucking ragdoll.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he's and how many World Cups has he played in? European Championships? You know, it's the guy.
If he was any good, he'd be in England.
He'd be in England. He's a total myth. But we need to start proving it on the park, and we know that. Now, let's move on with a game on Wednesday night. James, we're going to be lacking, obviously, Morelos and Halliday. Probably Kent. We'll find out on Tuesday. I strongly suspect that Kent will be missing as well. Do we then pitch in, because obviously Barisic is injured, do we then pitch in John Flanagan? Do we pitch in Lee Wallace? Or do we maybe look at a 3-5-2, for example, given that Morelos is out as well, and that gives you the opportunity to get Lafferty and Defoe onto the park? I mean, what's your thoughts on what we will do and what we should do, in your opinion?
I'm very concerned about the left-hand side. The fact that we're without Halliday and Barisic. Really, all that is left is Flanagan, unless you wanted to dip into the youths, and I'm not sure whether that's something we should be looking to do at this stage of the season. Flanagan's not the kind of player that can work as an offensive left-sided player. He's not that kind of player at all. So, as much as I would like to see us maybe try the three at the back, because I think Goldson, Worrell, and Katic together would be something that would be worth giving a shot. I don't see it, and I don't see Lee Wallace playing because he's just not had the appropriate game time, and I think we're past that point now. What I do expect is Defoe and Lafferty up top together. Is something I've been very keen to see from the point that Defoe arrived, because we've said before Morelos, I think, works better as a lone striker rather than with a partner. Whereas I don't think Defoe necessarily is. I think he needs that player alongside him who can do the parts of his game that he maybe can't, i.e. the physical side, and Lafferty will at least give you a bit more than what Defoe does in that aspect. I think what this is now, from now to the end of the season, it's guys who need to prove a point and need to prove that they can still offer something to this team going forward and for next season. There's a lot of guys that there's big question marks over, and whether they're necessarily up to it. The season isn't done because we still need to secure second place. That's a horrible thing to say, but the reality is it gives you a good chance of for the Europa League qualifiers it'll be the second round rather than the first round, and that does make a difference.
Oh, so it does. Yeah. We don't want to be coming back that early. Martyn, Gerrard hasn't had a lot of criticism for yesterday, and I think understandably given the way that the game panned out, but we haven't won in a while. Wednesday night, to me, is pretty crucial. I get what James is saying about second. I know none of us really care, but it's a minimum. But we haven't won for a wee while. We need to beat somebody, and if we don't win on Wednesday night, I think knives that aren't out at the moment, but they're certainly glinting at the top of the sheath.
Yeah. Yeah, I think his charisma still has enough of the fan base in thrall that they'll at least push on to Christmas before starting to ask serious questions. Yeah, it's been a brutal month, and we do need to finish strongly. Not because I don't really buy so much that you take that momentum into next season, because we've nothing to show for it in terms of silverware, and that's really all that matters at this club. But if we did finish a comfortable second, and as much as there will be some questions asked of him, there'll be a lot of pressure on him, because I think we've talked about it before. Old Firm or successful Old Firm managers that haven't won anything in their first full season, the list is very small. Rangers would have to go back to Scott Simon. So the pressure's ramped up. But if he could say, look, huge transition, my first year in the job, big turnover in the summer, always can be hit or miss in terms of recruitment. We are comfortably second, which you've not had since being back up. We've beaten Celtic maybe twice by that time, which you've not been able to do. We've been in the Europa League, which has generated X amount of millions of pounds, and for stature and everything else, you can't dismiss these things. Yes, there are big questions we need to address, mainly how to fucking beat Aberdeen and teams like Aberdeen, because if that can be cracked, then it's a different ballgame.
Well, absolutely, because there's an interesting point, and I've seen this quite a few times, and I'll just put it to bed about Celtic have regressed massively this season. No, they haven't. Their points total is very similar as it's been to the last 3 seasons. So,
no, absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, but there is a feeling that they are regressing, though. I think. Just in terms
they're
of
regressing from the high of Rodgers'
a ridiculous
first
season, yeah.
But that's not going to happen again soon. And look, I would certainly take a regression to that level. Don't get me wrong. I'd certainly like to have the strength they have. They're not as good as they were, but equally, them regressing slightly, it doesn't really matter. It's points totals that matter, and they're still picking up the points. You're right. They're winning these games 1-0 rather than 4-0. And that is a fact, but even so, I think we need to concentrate on getting our house in order. Lads, absolutely. I'd like a prediction for Wednesday night, please. James, I'll start with you.
I will go for 3-1 with Lafferty to get a hat-trick to please Cammy Bell.
Bit early to be drinking. Martin, after that shock prediction from James.
I will go 2-0.
I'll go 1-0 Rangers. I think it'll be pretty turgid, in all honesty, but I think that we will get over the line. Hearts aren't exactly renowned for coming away from home and going for it. So, although they had a really good result at the weekend, so who knows? And they've got the big lad Ikepezu, I think. James, you're better at pronunciations than me. He's back, and he's a talented player. So we will see what happens, and we look forward to that. So that'll do us for this week's Heart and Hand. Thank you very much to my 2 guests, the splendid Mr. Martin Ramsey.
I'd love to say it was a pleasure, but it's always good to talk to you both.
Yeah. Exactly. The wonderful Mr. James Forrest, again, no that one.
Thank you, David.
Thank you to our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Paul Myers. And if you like what you hear from Heart and Hand Rangers podcast, then please subscribe on our Patreon site. It's just $1.99 for up to 5 shows every single day on All Matters Rangers. You will love it, I promise. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back on Thursday to discuss the Hearts game. Until then, have a great week. Bye-bye.